Mr. Chair, we're live.
Thank you so much. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Baldwin Park Planning Commission for March 26th at 2025 at 7:03. If you are able to, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please place your hand over your heart. Ready, begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Republic for which it stands, one nation, God, visible. May be seated. Planning Secretary, will you do roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. Chair Peña,
Present.
Vice Chair Gonzalez,
Present.
Commissioner Escobosa,
Here.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Here.
and Commissioner Miranda de Zib.
Here.
Thank you. On to verbal communication. I now declare verbal communications open. Anyone wishing to address the commission on anything other than the items listed on the agenda may come to the podium. We will be restricting your comments to 3 minutes. So anyone wishing to speak, please come to the podium.
Mr. Chair, we did receive one speaker card for a non-agenda item. It's from Ms. Jennifer Welcher.
Hi, welcome. I'm sorry, if you mind turning on the microphone for you.
My name is Jennifer Walter. I'm here regarding the Metrolink station. I think it is not ADA compliant. The station itself, ramp to ramp, is 1/10 of a mile, and the only way a wheelchair can get down is to go all the way down to the railroad track and then turn so that they can get into the parking lot. And then the same on the other side. You have to go to the very end of the ramp and go an additional 15 feet to come down to the parking lot. But my issue is, can I show you something? I have to wear a medical boot. And depending on where I sit in the train, when I get off the train, there's the platform and then the sidewalk. But in between the sidewalk and the platform, there's bushes. There's little breaks in the bushes, but it's about a foot, maybe more, of a drop from the platform to the turf. It is very hard for someone with crutches, someone with a medical boot, someone who just doesn't have the balance to get down. I've gotten down a couple of times and almost fell because there's no steps for anyone to come down on. And in one section, there is dirt, and then there's a pipe that sticks up. Someone goes down that section, loses their balance and falls back and and that pipe is going to kill somebody. I don't see how it has not been shown before about putting steps. Like at least every 30 feet, or like with the length of the trains, because it's highly inconvenient and it hurts my legs to have to walk all the way down to the end of the ramp just to get to my car. And it hurts. It's painful. And I shouldn't, and nobody else should have to go through pain to get down from taking the metro. And I was told that it's at the bottom part. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us and speak. I know it's not easy, and of course, addressing your concerns. I want to make sure that we do have your contact information if you haven't
Yeah,
provided it already. Again, I would ensure that the planning secretary passes along your message, and if they have any questions, to the right department, and if they have any questions, they'll reach out to you directly.
Can I just ask a question? I know my time is up.
Sure.
Does the Metrolink platform and parking lot fall under street maintenance?
Nick, do you know the answer to that?
He gave me a card.
Mhm.
Okay. I was reading on the card and I was trying to figure out what department on the card that falls under. Uh-huh. So I just email them and discuss it. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
I have a really quick question. Nick. And I don't expect that you have the answer right now, but is there any way that we can look up what the ADA requirements are for? Okay. I'm gonna go Google stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the commission at this time? Seeing no further interest, I now declare verbal communications closed. The lone item on the consent calendar is the meeting minutes from the previous planning commission meeting. Would any commissioner like to pull this item for discussion? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from February 26, 2025 on the consent calendar?
I'll motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Peña,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Escobosa,
Yes.
and Commissioner Rodriguez.
Yes.
And Mr. City Attorney, I believe Commissioner Miranda DeZib would have to abstain because she was not here at that time?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. On to public hearings. The first and only case that we'll be addressing today is the request for approval of a conditional use permit to allow a recreational facility, indoor-outdoor soccer facility use, and a design review to review the building, and that location is in 14412 and 14424 Joan Bridge Street. The applicant Trinidad Campbell, that's the case number CP 23-05. PR 23-21. Ready for the report.
Thank you, David. Thank you and good evening, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Planning Commission. Before you is a conditional use permit application and design review application for a new soccer training facility located at 14412 and 14424 Joan Bridge Street. Next slide. The zoning for the property is industrial and surrounded by industrial properties, with the exception of the single-family residential properties to the south. Next slide. The next two slides are for context as well. The first shows an aerial photograph that shows the industrial buildings and the adjacent homes. Next slide. And the next slide shows some photos of the buildings showing the existing conditions and as well as the surrounding area. Next slide. The applicant is proposing to operate at this location a soccer training facility, and the applications needed are a conditional use permit for the proposed use and a design review for the improvements to the property. Next slide. This slide provides a bit more background to the existing condition of the building site. And then we'll look at the next slide. The conditional use permit, or CUP, is the principal application before the commission tonight because it includes analysis of whether or not the use is proposed for the zone, and if so, under what conditions. The recreational facilities require approval of a conditional use permit for the Baldwin Park Municipal Code. And it should be known that the former building use was a general office contractor. That use does not require any entitlements. Next slide. To understand the uses proposed, the plans must be first understood. The first plan is the existing site plan, and it shows the existing conditions. Next slide. This next plan here is the proposed site plan. It shows the aerial view of the site once it's developed. Notable on this plan are the setbacks. So that would be 0 on the side, 10 at the rear, and between 5 and 8 at the front. Next slide. The first floor plan shows an interior, shows that the interior existing building will be remodeled to a large soccer field, and there will be 39 parking spaces and drive aisles. Next slide. Second floor plan shows 3 smaller fields and a practice area and a meeting room with some accessory rooms. Next slide. This slide shows the elevations, which shows the exterior aesthetics of the project. As you can see, there'll be wood siding added to the front elevation to provide some decorative detail. And as well, you'll see black fencing and with padding on the inside that will screen the field area. Trees will be planted at the rear elevation and a few at the front as well, as you can see on the slide. And those at the rear are intended to provide some visual buffer between the adjacent properties. Next slide. Next, we're going to look at some of the development codes that apply to this project. This is just an overview. This is a highlight, right? And the first I'd like to point out is the lot coverage. And this is the percentage of the total lot area that is covered by enclosed structures and or carports, but excluding uncovered steps, driveways, walks, covered patios, terraces, and swimming pools. And the subject property does not propose to enclose any new structures on the first floor. The maximum floor area ratio for the property is 0.75. And I do want to point out there's a typo in the staff report that calls it out in one place as 1.0, but it is 0.75 for maximum FAR for industrial. And since FAR only applies to enclosed structures, the only existing building is counted towards the project, counted toward the FAR for the project, and that has a FAR of 0.52, which is below the maximum allowed. The maximum height is also compliant. So the soccer field fencing and lights will be either meeting or less than the maximum of 25 feet permitted by the zone. Next slide. In regards to parking and traffic, for this project, there's going to be 39 parking spaces provided. The required number of spaces is 13, which is 1 for each of the instructors plus 1 per field. But staff estimates based on the operation and operations plan and the characteristics of this project, it's more likely that we're going to see a demand of 26 to 29 spaces to be needed, and that is going to be less than the amount provided. The 39 should be adequate. Also, in regards to traffic, the project's not anticipated to generate enough additional vehicle trips to cause a traffic concern. This project was reviewed by a traffic engineer and was screened out as one that doesn't propose a significant impact to traffic. Next slide. In regards to noise, noise was measured at a similar business in existence in Covina, which has similar operating characteristics. Now, even though this project is similar, it had some characteristics associated with noise, like whistles and amplified music, that the proposed business is not going to have. Noise absorbing padding will be used for the proposed business, and this padding is rated to reduce noise levels by approximately 10 decibels. And with the use of the padding at the perimeter on the perimeter fencing, the noise will be reduced to approximately 49.1, which meets the city's requirements at all the times that this business will be open. Next slide, please. In regards to light and glare, light's not permitted to trespass over the property per the city's municipal code. The potential light sources for this business are the field lighting and the headlights from cars. And we're taking that into mind. We had the applicant go ahead and prepare the photometric plan now rather than later during plan check, which is often the case for projects. And that photometric plan is included with the architectural plans before you, included with the staff report. And it's included in the staff report with the architectural plans. I should be specific about that. And those photometric plans show that there'll be no light trespass. In regards to the headlights, those are going to be blocked from light trespass by a block wall and that's existing at the rear of the property. Next slide, please. There are several conditions of approval included with the project. I've included a few that I'd like to highlight here. One is condition A, which is the project shall be developed and maintained in substantial compliance with the business plan narrative. And this is important because what this does is it limits the applicant to do what they say they're going to do. They said this is going to be for a soccer training facility and has during these hours with maximum of these many students. They have to follow that plan, and that's part of the condition. And the consequence for that would be they could be called if there's violations, repeated violations. This project could come back before you for reconsideration of their CP. For E and F, there's specific conditions that talk about no walk-ins and no tournaments. These are big deals because if these things were allowed, that would change the nature of this business. It would be more impactful. So those are specifically banned here. H, no outdoor music, microphones, whistles, or horns. Again, these are things that can be commonplace at other facilities and can be impactful in terms of noise. This facility is prohibited from having any of those. And then I is in regards to lighting, the field lights need to be off at 10, which is when they're closing, but so it's not. So this is important because they can't end the class and then, clean and do those things and turn it off an hour later, like many businesses do. They let their customers leave and then they close up. Lights out at 10 is when they've got to be strict about this, and the condition is there to enforce that. Next slide, please. For CEQA, this project is exempt from CEQA under Class 32. Class 32 allows for infill development without further environmental review. And Class 32 does require certain areas be explored and examined to make sure there's no impact to the environment. And those were by a professional consultant, and that has been included with your staff report for your review. Next slide, please. And it is our recommendation that the project is approved, and by PC Reso 23-28 for the approval of CP 2305 and PR 2321, and find that the project is categorically exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines 15332. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions or comments.
Great. Thank you so much, Nick, and to your team for conducting the staff report. I know it certainly takes lots of person hours to develop this. I'll now ask the commission to see if there's, the commissioners to see if there's any questions to staff at this time.
I have a few questions. So my first question is regarding the age group that will be participating at the location. I believe I read it was from 5 to 17-year-olds. Will adults also be practicing or?
No, no. So there's specific, so that is under condition of approval number A, which limits them to their business operation plan. They can't expand beyond what they've declared, which is that 5 to 17 children only.
I also noticed that under the conditions, it was for practice and drills. But I also read that at other facilities, they'll have large-scale events. So my question is if, which is against what we're saying they can do. What are the penalties for non-compliance if those things happen?
Right. So typically, it starts with an escalating type of enforcement with it could be notice of violation.
All right, I can't hear that
Oh.
well.
Sorry, my apologies. So there could be notices from code enforcement if there's been violations, but then they could also receive a first a notice from planning that just more of like a reminder of their requirements, and then they could be the approval could be brought back before you for reconsideration of their approval.
Thank you. And then I had a question in terms of, and maybe you can't answer this, but in terms of, there was a facility in Covina, in terms of the long-term impact on the residents' property value, have we seen a positive or negative effect from a facility being built so close to residential homes?
That's not an analysis that the planning staff performs.
And then my last question is in terms of parking. I know that you stated that there's more than ample parking. My concern is when sometimes parents are in a hurry dropping off their children and they may not want to go into the parking lot. So what's in place to ensure that people aren't idling in front of the facility, or if there is an event that overflow parking isn't affecting the surrounding neighborhoods, the residential homes?
Yeah. So definitely there should be a condition of approval that requires a parking and queuing plan required of the applicant. And that's precisely why the reason for that, just to make sure the applicant has a plan that addresses that prevents queuing either offsite or onsite. Those are the sort of things that can jam up a parking area and make it not run as efficiently as designed. So that's something that definitely, you know what, now that I'm thinking of it, I'm not sure it made it into the resolution. So if you are so inclined, if you do incline or are inclined to approve this, go ahead and add the queuing plan as a additional condition of approval. It may be in there, but I'm not sure I made it in the final edit.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions for staff?
I have a couple of questions. The last time this project was brought before us, there was some concerns, and I'm just wondering how they've been addressed. Um, I believe one of the concerns was that the residents in the neighborhood did not receive proper notice of this project. Are we confident now that they've all been notified appropriately?
Yes, this project was legally noticed. So this was via mail, newspaper, and posting on our website, and then also posting in public places.
Okay, thank you. The other question that I had, again, this is, if I'm recalling this correctly, there was a concern about the lights glaring into the houses on the back side of this project. How has that been addressed?
Yes, so that's been addressed through the padding. So there's not the project scope has changed to add the padding along the back fences, and that has two benefits. One is that it reduces the sound because the padding is specially designed to absorb sound, so that reduces the sound. But it also light doesn't pass through it either. So when you put the padding that is the same height as the fence, you accomplish both goals. So none of the field lighting is going to be taller than that fence lighting. So you won't have any of the field lights extend past those pads, the padded fences along the perimeter.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. So the highest point of the fence will be 25 feet. Yes. The way the applicants address this is that they do believe that's this is their business, and we talked about this, and they believe that the fencing provided is going to stop most of them. Will it stop all of them? I mean, all is a lot, right? And the ones that do go over, I asked them about that, and they said they would just write it off. They're not going to try to retrieve it.
I had a question, and I don't think it's in here, and it's probably just generalized. With the location being in a high traffic area located next to Arrow Highway or within proximity, and Allen Company and Waste Management being down, was there ever any consideration of the air quality in the area? Because it's going to be open outdoors with young children, and especially in summertime, me being a former coach, there's going to be a lot of air pollutants and particulars in that area.
Yeah, that's not something we looked at just because when we I'm sorry, are you speaking to the commissioner, Susan? What?
So
Thank you.
Sure. Is that better? Can you hear me? Okay. I was speaking to the if with the air pollution because of the proximity to Arrow Highway and Joan Bridge with Waste Management and Allen Company with young athletes being exposed to those particulates, if there was any consideration of that taken into the report.
Thank you. So the answer is that that's not something we looked at. When we look at CEQA, as we look, and CEQA directs the planners that are administering this, that we look at what impacts does the project have on the area, but it does, and no, not the other way around. So no, we did not look at that.
Great. So a couple more questions from my side. So I understand that there was a traffic analysis, and that traffic analysis was conducted or prepared by, was it Kittleson and Associates? Now, could you just remind us about how that works when the applicant hires sort of a type of consultant, or this type of consultant that provides analysis? So correct me if I'm wrong. So they're the ones that the applicant's the one that hires them, but they still have to provide that independent report.
Right. So the way it's set up here in Baldwin Park is that the environmental consultants and the sub-consultants are actually they work for the city. They're paid for by the applicant, but they work for the city. So the traffic consultant is a sub-consultant of the primary.
So no matter if the applicant is paying for that service, although the consultant or sub-consultant is working for the city, that consultant has that fiduciary duty to ensure that they are providing, again, sort of the best transparent, honest report, not because they're being paid for by the applicant.
Right. And then also I think another factor that goes into it is that these are professionals, and their work is going to be judged, and they have a reputation to withhold. So they produce their reports in a professional manner with their reputation on the line.
Great. And then I know that I know one of my colleagues had also talked about the analysis, or at least the city doesn't, or planning department doesn't do this analysis about how it affects property prices, for example, within the city of Covina, at least a comparable location. As part of the analysis of that comparable location, I understand that you had compared the sound levels and so forth. Were there any investigation about kind of just complaints from the existing neighbors, or even the city, if we've had some type of project like this in the past where the neighbors were, after it was approved, after it was built and so forth, that they're actually had long-term negative effects to the.
So this will be the first of its kind in the city.
No
So
pressure.
we have, I mean, right. We don't have an example to go by in Baldwin Park, so that analysis was not done.
I know that the field lights are supposed to be turned off by 10 p.m. and that also means that there is just no additional hours of operation after 10 p.m. So there's not like a after hours or glow in the dark type of game that will be occurring.
Absolutely not.
Okay. And then I noticed that there were sort of these mechanisms in place to ensure that the noise or several items were kept to a minimum. One was sort of a tournament, no tournaments. Can you define, well, I'm sure I can ask the applicant after, but I'm curious from the point of view of the city, at least the definition of a tournament versus several matches. I mean, it's feel like there's a little bit of a gray area there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'll share, and then the applicant can
Sure.
do a better job, I'm sure. But yes, the function and purpose and intent for this business, as stated in their program, it's for training. There's instructors, and this for training. It's not meant for the primary intent is not to have tournaments, and that's not even allowed. Not to have competitive matches per se for just walk-on recreational uses. Also walk-ons are not, so it's not a platform in that way. But and yeah, so no walk-ons, no tournaments, and it's the primary goals instruction. Yeah, and the applicant I'm sure will give a refined answer.
Of course, thanks. And then believe it's just the last question I have, and I don't mean to come off as a loaded question. There was a question, or at least a concern in one of the letters that I had reviewed, that again, city was, I think, just sort of implied that we were only interested in making a decision to make money out of this project. So at least for the sake of transparency, of course, I understand that the applicant has been paying I'm sure a lot of project fees or application fees, along with paying for the consultants and sub-consultants. How would the city make money, again, make money off of this project? You have the business license, Is there sort of sales tax or dollars off of this, or I'm just curious to see what would be the financial benefit to the city?
Well, the intent is not to make this, not for
Right.
the city to make money on this. Yes, we do collect fees for the application. The applicant would need a business license, so that's an annual fee. Sales tax? No, because they're not selling anything.
Mhm.
Sales tax is associated with retail. They're not proposing retail.
So it's
So-
safe to assume that we probably wouldn't get rich off of approving this project, should there be majority.
Yeah, it's not a money-making venture for the city.
Great, thank you. Are there any additional questions? Please.
So it's a good question. So there is a good path to travel to get to the site on Main. So there's sidewalks on Main. It's a larger street. There's even a bike, it's not a path, but it's a lane. There's a bike lane on Main. So if for students who are coming north-south to get to the facility, I imagine they would take that option because those city facilities are available for them to get there safely. Once they arrive on Joan Bridge, unfortunately, those same amenities are not there. But it's quite a short distance between Main and their site on Joan Bridge. It's just a few properties.
Any additional questions for staff? All right, if there are no further questions for staff, I will now declare a public hearing open. I will ask the applicant to come up first to the podium and speak for 3 minutes. Then we'll open it up for the rest of the public for any additional comments, and then I will then ask the applicant once again to come back for another 3 minutes. So please come to the podium. Sorry, I don't mean to make it too confusing. So let me go ahead and just repeat the instructions. So we'll have you speak for 3 minutes. Then we'll open it up just to the rest of the public. And after everyone from the public has had the chance to speak, we'll ask you to come back for an additional 3 minutes to address any rebuttals if you'd like. And we'll also be asking you questions. All right.
Thank you.
All right. So your 3 minutes have started.
Good evening, members of the Planning Committee. Thank you for taking the time this evening. My name is Shima Berenji, and I am the owner of this project. I am deeply committed and passionate to creating opportunities for the young kids within the Baldwin Park community to learn and to play and develop when it comes to soccer. I envision a space where these children can thrive, learn, grow, and develop through the game. This project will provide a safe space within the Baldwin Park community where the youth can be active and engaged. Thank you for your support and your consideration. I look forward to working together to create a brighter future for the young kids in our community. At this time, I would like to introduce our land use attorney from Rutan and Tucker, Travis Van Lyten, who is here this evening to assist and discuss any questions or concern on this project. Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, fellow commissioners. As my client, Ms. Berenji, just indicated, my name is Travis Van Lyten with the law firm of Rutan and Tucker. I'm a land use attorney who specializes in both CEQA and general land use law. First off, my client would like to convey their deepest thanks to Mr. Baldwin and the rest of your staff and your attorneys as well, working with us through the issues of CEQA. I can tell you, Chair Pena, that specifically in terms of the deliverables that have been provided to the city that have been met with vigorous review from city staff itself. Make sure that anything being submitted by the applicant is getting a true and honest and unbiased review from city staff. So the conclusions therein are the city's staff's own conclusions as well, at least from my perspective. With me today, I have our environmental consultant as well as our planner who are here to answer specific questions as they may come up. Additionally, I did flag some questions that were raised by the commission right now, but in light of the fact that we'll have some rebuttal time, I'll answer those later, and especially if it might address some of the comments raised by other commenting parties here. Other than that, will make myself available to any other questions. And again, we thank you for your consideration and we're looking forward to a hopeful approval. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Just to make sure, are the consultants also going to request speaking time? If so, please submit a speaking card.
We will do that right now just to make sure. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Secretary, are there any additional speaker cards?
We have 3 additional ones.
Okay.
First one is for Charles Cole. Nope. Susan Cole.
We just had our 53rd anniversary on Tuesday.
Congratulations.
She still won't let me date. I don't understand.
Thank you for your time. I have some visual aids. I don't think you can see them from there. I would like to hand them to to Mr. Baldwin. Perhaps he can pass them on to you.
Thank you.
Minutes to talk. Thank you also for speaking into the microphones. I wear hearing aids, but it still doesn't work that well.
We're going to restart the time just because we haven't allowed
Thank
the
you.
full 3
I
minutes.
Appreciate that.
And we're good to go.
Okay. All righty. 3 minutes. My name is Susan Cole. I own the property directly behind the proposed site. My son with his new baby are living in there now. Olivia Canellis is to my right and Vicky Ho is to my left. Neither one of them could come tonight. What we have here is an aerial. I'll give this to you. This is Vicky's house. This little orange one is my house. That's the littlest house. Olivia's is here. This is the existing properties that are here. They are set back 40 feet and 50 feet. This is what is being proposed to go behind my house. This huge lot to lot, big structure. Okay, the submitted site plan is treating the proposed 21,000 square foot soccer facility as if it would be located in the middle of a light industrial area, not an industrial area that butts right up to residents. Thank you so much for your questions and your concerns that you have. As you hopefully noticed, the staff report is woefully different from the facts. The staff report and the resolutions does not contain any of the conditions of approval that you're talking about. There is no sidewalk on Joan Bridge. There is no condition of approval saying they have to turn the lights off one time or the other. They said they're going to have a business narrative. It isn't part of the resolution, so you don't know what hours you might be approving. The only thing they have is that thing I passed around. It calls a training session. They're just telling you what they're planning on doing. There's no restrictions on scrimmages. There are no restrictions on birthday parties. There's no restrictions on renting the structure out. The property owner is already advertising that she will rent it out. There is the noise that they talked about. Anyway, there are so many facts that I really feel that you need to know. Your name is going to be on this approval. They've already brought their attorney. It's going to be appealed. It perhaps will go to court. So you really need to be sure you know what you're approving. Frankly, the staff has played fast and loose with a lot of the facts. Please continue this item to next month, a date uncertain, but just to give yourself the time to look at all the information. I think it would behoove you to take the extra time. We would love it. We'd love you to deny it right now. But obviously you have to do your due diligence. You've done it before. You've talked to people on Little John where they have industrial properties that back up to residential properties. I know you'll do your due
Sorry, I need
diligence.
to interrupt. The time's up.
That's okay. Thank you so
Thank you
much
so much for your time. You can present your name again, and then the time will start.
Are you ready for me?
Oh, we're ready.
Oh, man, I'm glad. My name is Charles Cole, and that woman lets me sleep with her. Like I said, 53 years, and we own the house right behind this project. Our residential neighborhood is very important to us and to the neighbors on both sides. I mean, we've been there a long time. We've never had any issues. Property setbacks on the industrial things are 40 and 50 feet. They're proposing 10 feet when it should be at least a minimum of 20, according to the code. Their own study shows that there will be light leakage over the back of the property. Their own study does. You can see on the drawings that you have there, that's theirs, not ours. Light will leak over, noise will leak over. This is a residential neighborhood, an old, historic Baldwin Park residential neighborhood that now is something that is going to change. I kind of said that if you could honestly say that you wouldn't mind having this in your backyard, yeah, you go ahead and vote for it. But it's not something that we want in our backyard. We're positive that you'll agree with us on that. I don't know, even though our neighbor has a special needs child that is extremely disturbed by noise, that shouldn't have anything to do with it because we shouldn't have to deal with the noise. All you have to do is go to one of these soccer fields and listen what goes on. Yeah, it's a training facility. They're going to have games. That's how you learn. A recreational facility, it ought to be in a recreational area. It ought to be probably away from the pollution of the Allen Company and Arrow Highway and the rest of the stuff that goes on there. We all want to do good by our kids, but this is just the wrong area for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. And then Planning Secretary, do you have a third?
Yes, Mr. David Felix.
I'm David Felix. Don't really have a whole lot to say. I mean, it was spoken pretty eloquently by them. The only things that I really had a concern is I spent a lot of time over there too. I've even helped, pretty much improve their house. Hanging out in the backyard, well, first of all, let me just say that what you're trying to do is amazing. I'm 100% think that every child should be 100% happy all the time and get everything they need in order to be successful in life. I don't necessarily agree with this building being so tall in the back of a house where, you know, you wanna be able to go in your backyard and look out and, you know, see a little bit of the sky. You know, we're in a city, but get what you can. This whole facility is 25 feet tall. Okay, the upper portion of it, I mean, padding, trying to damper the sound, light, everything, that's great. But you know, it's not going to be 100%, and it's going to have porous areas that, you know, are going to be needed for breezeway. I mean, these kids are practicing on top of a facility that doesn't have a covering, exposed to the sun, they're going to need some kind of breeze, right? So that being said, they lose their privacy. You know, they're going to lose their privacy in the backyard. And I'm not saying a 5-year-old is going to really, you know, be trying to look through, but you got all the way up to 17. I remember what it was like to be, you know, 15, 16, 17, and just curious. You know? And even though it's a training facility, you're not training 24/7 or even the whole time that you're there. I just don't see why couldn't be a single level maybe somewhere, or, you know, maybe even just separate location altogether. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Are there anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this matter? Nick, I'm sorry, do you have any other speaking cards?
So we have 2 additional speaker cards. Trinidad Campbell. Oh. Okay. So they're both from the applicant team, so it looks like not at this time.
All right, seeing that there isn't any additional anyone else wishing from the public to speak, I'll now ask the applicant team to come up to the podium and provide a rebuttal. And then we'll also open it up for questions. We're all ears.
Again, thank you, Honorable Chair, fellow commissioners. I think I want to kind of just reframe this just very quickly in terms of what this project is. The business plan is clearly defined. Staff is very comfortable with what the business plan is defined as. It's materials that have been submitted to the city to date actually are much more detailed than in some other projects we normally have, including but not limited to talking about how many students will be on each field to figure out the exact amount of parking that's required. So the concerns about this use being kind of turned into some sort of general rec league, all day adult league, or even children's league where you have these massive tournaments or anything like that is just a non-starter. It's not an issue.
Excuse me, our famous Metrolink is going to be passing by. Do you mind getting closer to the microphone?
No, not a problem.
Thank
Not
you.
a problem. So those concerns about this use spiraling into other unintended uses is just not a possibility here. There is a condition that specifically ties the property owner to a specific use as currently proposed. The city has plenty of enforcement tools at its disposal, some of which Mr. Baldwin listed out for any violations of those use restrictions. Any potential use restriction in the future or use change in this future would require subsequent approval from the city. Those concerns about this becoming some sort of new deleterious use is just not well-founded. Additionally, I wanted to kind of point out a couple of the specific impacts were discussed about, specifically light and glare. One of the major changes from when this project was here previously is the fact that the setback here in this case has moved back from 5 feet to 10 feet to accommodate those additional trees that will be screening the entirety of the back of this project that are mature, full-grown trees that, per the renderings, cover up until the top of the structures. Additionally, there's a lot being said about today about the 25-foot height limit. The existing building on the site that will not be demolished is already 25 feet tall. That is the existing site condition, with the other building being only slightly shorter. So at this point in time, it's a similar both setback and height as to one of the properties, clearly. Regarding noise and traffic and other air quality impacts, but with all due respect to public comments that have been submitted to date, the applicant has provided, which has been reviewed and verified by staff, technical appendices that address these issues specifically, and these people are experts in their fields. That is what substantial evidence is. Staff has reviewed those conclusions and has found that that there is no potential significant impact resulting from this project. And we would submit that the commission should defer to those findings. Additionally, we do have other consultants who are available to answer specific questions from the commission, but having not heard any actual technical comments from the comments today, I'm not going to address any kind of hypothetical. Frankly, I think Mr. Baldwin and your staff have done a fantastic job with their staff report, and I think most of your answers are in there. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
I'll stand here for some questions if you'd like, or if you'd like me to come up later, whatever you prefer.
Great. I will now open it up just to the commission to ask questions to the applicant and their team. So I'll start off. I recall that our planning secretary mentioned that there were sort of these mechanisms in place to ensure that the noise level was kept perhaps to a minimum. I think I heard just a couple items. Did one of them include a whistle? Is that right? Or
That is correct.
that is
That was
correct?
directed to me. That is correct. There's a condition prohibiting the use of whistles and horns.
Okay, so is that just towards the audience or the spectators, or is that also addressed to the, or does that also apply to the trainers?
That applies to the trainers. That's uses on the site.
Okay.
And I think that's important. This is kind of where, again, I go back to the use being conflated to something else. This is truthfully a training facility. It's meant to guide people who are focused in soccer to learn the ins and outs of the details of the sport. This is not, again, a rec league or just some sort of cheering squad. There won't be these types of, it's a very unique use, if you will.
Forgive me for playing sort of devil's advocate, but if I'm driving on here Ramona Boulevard and then I sometimes see folks playing or training for soccer, again, I can't tell the difference between it's a match or just a training. My understanding is that typically the trainers use whistles. So is that, will they just be shouting instead to call somebody's attention? Or at least I understood that it was always sort of.
The use that was being proposed is, again, not a traditional, like, I played rec league growing up. It's not the traditional one when you have.
I was in band, so it's a little hard.
But it's not the type of use you see like when you're on a high school field and you see coaches yelling, saying, get over here. Each field, I mean, each of these fields are not regulation size soccer fields, except for, I think, the one inside might be pretty close, but that's the largest by far. That one's inside. The rest are smaller specifically for this reason, with each area being housing roughly about 5 students tops. So there's not going to be this type of situation where you have people yelling across. And again, I would also point out that one of the conditions of approval for the project is ongoing compliance with Baldwin's municipal code. If any noise from that site violates that, those standards still apply and the city has its enforcement mechanisms. So, I mean, to speculate about a potential impact like that without it actually coming to fruition when you have requirements saying you must comply with these rules is would be speculation on my part about what you'd have to do, if that makes sense.
It does. I also heard one of just the public speakers, again, forgive me, that they were thinking about the advertising for renting it out, or I may have even misheard renting it out for events and so forth. Could you expand on that, if that was true?
Yeah. Yes. So my client does have a nonprofit that is separate and apart from this project. That use, and as articulated, will not have any bearing on the use of this building. Again, the use of this building is dictated by the application before this city and is conditioned to be operated in that manner. What was used in some other description of another use previously shouldn't have any bearing, in my opinion, on this commission's consideration of this use. But I can say unequivocally that my client's intention is to use the project as articulated in the plan. It's something that's been heavily discussed with staff to make sure that the staff understands what those uses are specifically. And it's something that they expect moving forward. And if I let her up here right now, she would stress strenuously that her goal is to make this as specific of this specific use that has been articulated in this plan as possible.
Great. So just trying to read between the lines. So it is assuming, they do have a nonprofit, and if they do rent it out to that nonprofit, again, it'll be within just sort of the guidelines of the plan. Is that right?
In that scenario, yes, I guess, but I would also submit that per the conditions, I think the staff has done a good job kind of limiting that option. So if that use starts being proposed, such as being used even in accordance with, but being rented out for money or something along those lines, then that might even require us coming back, maybe not to the planning commission, but to staff to get approval.
Are there any additional questions to the applicant? Okay, so I do have a last question. I'd like to actually hear from the applicant directly if possible. Yes. So,
Yes,
yeah, not to put you on the hot seat again. I know that within the staff report, there was kind of the community benefit of what, should the planning commission decide to vote a majority to approve this resolution and have it exempt from CEQA. In your opinion, what do you think is the community benefit of actually having this type of facility?
Again, as I mentioned, it's for kids to come in and to learn, to grow, and to develop when it comes to playing soccer.
Okay. And is this your first facility, or have you had other facilities in the past for other?
This is the first.
And then can you share us what inspired you to?
Yeah, I played soccer my entire life. I was a former Division I athlete, and I coached within the high school, within club, within collegiate level as well. So I've been an athlete my entire life for soccer and also a coach.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, by all means.
Regarding, I also read about the community benefit, but it almost seemed like it was a private club or a, so students can't just walk on, right? How would they participate at the location?
There's no walk-ins. That's
There are-
appointment base.
And in terms of cost, is it more like a club sport where I know some of the club sports are rather expensive? In terms of Covina, how many residents, or maybe this is a staff question, how many residents from Covina actually participate at the Covina site? Do we know that?
No, I don't have that information. We didn't do that sort of analysis.
My concern would be that we would bring in a facility that would be charging a fee that maybe our residents couldn't afford. And so I was just wondering in terms of pricing, how expensive it would be, or if if there would be times that student clubs could come in and participate.
I would want to make sure that this is affordable for the Baldwin Park community, for the kids. That is, at the end of the day, one of my goals is to make sure that it's a community that everyone can enjoy this space and continue to learn and grow and develop here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, just one other point, just that was raised
Yes.
briefly, one of the comments that I forgot to respond to. Possibility of continuing this anymore is almost becoming not feasible for my client. So we're really hoping the planning commission can make a final decision today. I'm understanding there might be an appeal and the city council might have to hear this based off what the commenter said, but either way, we feel comfortable with where we're at right now. So I just wanted to stress that for the record in case that was a question pending.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Are there any additional questions before we close? Okay, so now I will close the public comment section of the public hearing. I will ask additional questions to staff hearing what we just heard right now. So in a hypothetical situation, certainly not a representation of where I'm leaning for as chair, but certainly I think I would ask this question for the rest of the commission, and certainly I think echoing a little bit more about what the attorney had just mentioned. But if the commission chooses, or at least votes not a majority, again, not adopting this resolution, what would in that scenario, what would end up happening?
So in other words, are you asking what a denial?
That is correct.
Denial would look like? That is one of your choices here today. You can choose to deny the resolution, and then there would be an appeal period. And then if you were to deny the resolution, then it would be the applicant who would have the opportunity to appeal your decision to the city council.
Thank you.
Can I just touch on the two other options that you all have? And just for the record, it's our commissioner's first meeting. And so I just want to brief her and the commission entirely on the options on the table today. As the director pointed out, one of the options today is to deny the resolution, deny the application if you feel like the evidence before you does not support the findings. Another option that you have is to continue the item. There's sort of two sub options there. You can continue this indefinitely, or you can continue this to a date certain. The third option that you have is to approve this as is, or you can approve this with conditions of approval. What's on the resolution now can be amended right now today to address some of the concerns that you all have. What that looks like is you motion to approve, and then you state on the record the conditions of approval that you would like to add.
Great, thank you for that clarification, or at least for listing out all those options. We have a lot of information on our desks right now. I know there's a lot of information just shared with us at this moment. I know there's also information shared from the public or additional public comment in addition to the applicant. I know that one of our commissioners had also kind of had some interest in maybe looking a little bit closer to the resolution language and seeing if there needed to make any changes or amendments. So with that, I'd feel very comfortable if we have a 15-minute recess for all of us just to address any questions that we may have on our own, or at least certainly I do have my to-do list as I've been listening to all sides of the conversation. So I'll give everyone 15 minutes just to take the time to review anything that you need to review. I would caution just to ensure that we don't talk to each other. And if we do need to have further discussions, certainly we will be opening up for deliberation should we, before we make a decision on this. So we'll give it 15 minutes and then we'll check back in.
And I just want to remind the commissioners that we are still on the record. And so I urge you all to not speak to each other, conduct your own investigation, to solely review the evidence that you have before you today.
Thank you all for your patience.
Pardon, sorry for the interruption, Mr. Chair. We did receive one piece of late correspondence that is not before you today. So before you break, if it's all right, I would like to read it into the record. It's just so you guys are aware of this comment. This was received today. It reads, "Dear Planning Commission, my name is Vicky Ho, and I've lived in California on California Avenue for over 10 years. I strongly oppose the proposal to build a soccer field complex. The right lights and noise are not appropriate for a residential area. This is already heavy traffic on our small street due to Frank's Market. With the addition of the soccer complex, there will only be more traffic. Once again, I strongly oppose the development of the soccer complex. Thank you, Vicky Ho, 14411 California Avenue, Baldwin Park."
Thank you.
Any questions you have should be asked on the record. So I'll give you all 15 minutes to review anything you need to review. So we have about 2 minutes and we'll let all of the attendees come back. We said 15 minutes, so I want to make sure we don't begin before anybody comes back. Before the chair reconvenes, just for the record, during the break, a member of the public, Ms. Susan Cole, came and asked whether during deliberations, questions could be asked to all members of the public, and I let her know that yes, typically during the deliberation period, the planning commissioners ask questions necessary to make their final determination. So they ask staff, they've asked members of the public, and including opponents and proponents of the project. So just wanted to make that clear for the record.
Great. As we open deliberation, I just wanted to make a quick note. I know in one of the, so we are closing public hearing, and of course now we are now opening up our deliberation. I do want to make a note that I know one of the letters that we had received talked about sort of anxiety, talked a little bit of anxiety about the result of this decision. And I think we can safely say I think there is anxiety on all sides. So I think I wanted just to kind of be mindful of that. But also a little comment about just sort of that some of the neighbors come from, don't believe that maybe the commission will be doing their due diligence and so forth as a result from experiences from the neighbors coming in from other countries where democracies don't work. And I just do want to state that, we are a very diverse commission here, where of course either we or our parents come from and grandparents come from countries where maybe democracy is perhaps dying and so forth. So I just want to highlight that we do want to be as fair and transparent as possible. Certainly from my side as chair and the vice chair, but of course from our attorney as well, just to ensure that we are fair and as transparent and listen to all sides as well. So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and just open it up I know we had around 15 minutes to review. So certainly we'll be opening up for our fellow commissioners to see what additional questions they may have asked to some members of the public, as well as or to a staff, or at least to speak amongst ourselves. So I'll go ahead and open it now. Yeah, go ahead.
So I did have, well, looking on the two things. So first, under the planning conditions of approval, under F, I'm wondering, it says that, F says that the tournaments are prohibited at this facility, and I know they talked about renting out the facility. And I didn't see anything, within the conditions that's talked about, prohibiting renting out the facility. So I don't know if that's something that we want to, include. The other thing that I did notice is that, the lights, it did talk about the lights being turned off at 10 PM. However, it did not talk about anything, and I wouldn't assume people would play in the dark, but you would never know. So I'm wondering if something needs to be included that, play would also stop at 10 PM. I assume people aren't going to be playing in the dark, but they may, stay after. And the other thing I'm thinking is if we're working with 5 to 17-year-olds, we've seen studies that they need sleep. And so being out as late as 10 PM, that's pretty late during the weekday. So just some food for thought.
Yeah, thank you so much for that feedback. I know that that's as I was reviewing the resolution a little bit closer, certainly those are items that jumped on to me. And, I would feel, if there is sort of that appetite, I would be interested in making the language a little bit much more narrower. I know that the other thing that I didn't see, and again, for the planning staff, correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't also specify, again, the age group as well, or age range as well. I know, Deanna, you had also another concern of yours was the queue as well as for parking, or at least for idling as well. So I know parking, so I certainly do trust the consultant, or at least the language that they, or the report that they provided. As far as that there won't be any additional traffic or abnormal traffic. But I wouldn't say it wouldn't hurt to add some type of language about the queue. So that's my feedback. And again, just wanted to just check in with other members of the commission if how they felt about it, about what Dan and I just discussed, or again, if there are any additional questions for the public or for staff.
Is there any, I'm not sure if it's already on the plan, but is there any restriction for like the community members, like possibly parking in that structure? Because I know there was going to be, in the plan, it said that not all parking spaces were going to be used.
You can ask staff.
It was not a part of their business proposal to let out any of their spaces. It is private property. They're here to ask a specific directly, but I there's nothing that they've provided to staff that would indicate that they're interested in letting non-members, non-participants park there.
Because that could be a possibility. So I was just wondering, like, any signage, because I know in like regular businesses, there's like signage that says, this is restricted property, you can't park here, subject to towing. So I wasn't sure if, keeping in mind if there's a parking issue, that some of the residents might potentially park in that structure.
If it's the wish of the planning commission, you could add a condition of approval to require signs, or that would be an option for you.
Thank you.
I advise the commissioners as they're what appears to be formulating conditions of approval for a you need specific language. So you can't just have nebulous requirements of parking shouldn't be allowed for non-visitors. But if you go to page 26 of the document before you, those are the conditions of approval. Those are samples of the type of language that you need to articulate into the record. I just wanted to point you to that.
I did have a question to my fellow commissioners, just so that I'm understanding what is potentially being proposed. Chair Pena, you mentioned about adding language restricting the age of participants.
That is correct.
I thought I saw that in the,
Where did you see
I
it?
saw that in the report. Give me 1 second. But am I able
Well-
to ask the applicant a question? But am I correct? I do recall seeing something that there would be nobody over the age of 17. I think it was 5 to 17.
Please.
Yes, that's part of the business plan, and that's one of the condition number 7, I believe, Mr. Baldwin, is the one that requires strict compliance with the business plan. Additionally, on the issue of letting potential parking spaces, that is currently not part of the business plan, so any type attempt to monetize those spaces in that way or something like that would have to be prohibited essentially under our existing conditions. Same thing with the play stoppage and lights off. Again, our business plan says we'll be done operating by 10 p.m. And lights turn off at 10 p.m. That's the full stop. That is a currently enforceable condition. That's where we're at right now, but just so.
Sure. So
And any questions you have here, true.
So, Mr. Baldwin, so as far as the resolution versus the business plan, if it is in the business plan, then we can assume that it is, and if we do approve the resolution, it is set in stone, or does that language need to be within the resolution to carry perhaps more weight?
It is effective the way it's written in the resolution. So the way it's written intent, and that was intentional to write it that way. So the business plan is and not one part of it, but the whole business plan
Sure.
is set, and they need to operate per the business plan. And the way A reads is that any deviation from that.
I see the business plan narrative, right?
Yeah. So that is there. It is captured. So if it's in the business plan, it is required.
Thank you for that clarification. So Commissioner Deanna, not to put you on the spot, but it looks like most of it has been addressed within the business narrative, and that was a very great clarification on that. I noticed that, again, you were concerned a little bit about much more of the queue, or at least cars sort of idling. I don't recall seeing that, or at least it was kind of mentioned that maybe wasn't in the business narrative. So I'm wondering if that's something that you'd like us to go ahead and include, if should we choose to approve the resolution. No, what I'm hearing that it wasn't in the narrative, based off of Mr. Baldwin's initial discussion.
Well, I don't know if I could say this right now, but I just, at this point, I don't feel comfortable making a decision. There's a lot at stake. And there's just a lot of information that, as commissioners, I believe we need to take more time to review the information.
On the same note, I do feel compelled to remind the commission that our role here is to determine whether this project is meeting the regulations as they stand. Absolutely, everyone has to vote how they are comfortable, but I do feel compelled to remind everyone that we're the first step in the approval of this project, or maybe for the applicant, we're like step 20. But again, we determine if this is compliant with local, state, federal regulation, and then the city council will determine how they feel about implementing this project into our city.
And I just want to clarify a little bit that your role is to determine whether there is substantial evidence to support the findings that this complies with the code. What substantial evidence looks like is for you all to determine whether what you've heard today, the staff report you have in front of you, supports the findings.
Sure. And even on a sort of philosophical note, and hence why I kind of asked the question, it is, what is the community benefit of this? Certainly I do see both sides. You have the benefit there of, perhaps inspiring new uh, athletes, perhaps in soccer or other types. So, that could be a community benefit. Certainly, when I was reading sort of the staff report, folks, who are in Baldwin Park, or at least within the San Gabriel Valley or the hub, at least within 605 and 10, don't have to travel to Pasadena, don't have to travel Monterey Park or even Pomona or even Ontario. I know that there's other facilities there. So I think that's one thing to think about, but certainly on the other side is there is a community benefit, but to what extent as well, to at what cost? Is there going to be light pollution? Is it going to be really kept to the minimal standards, or is it going to be as, minimized as possible? I understand that some of the neighbors have some needs or could be again, have some negative effects as far as, or reactions as far as and again, that's to be defined. From my perspective, as a result of maybe the light pollution or even the noise pollution. So I think certainly those are, again, from kind of my angle where I'm kind of just sort of trying to weigh the decision. I would kind of add as well is that not that I believe all consultants, but I know one of the biggest questions that I, kind of ask is sort of what is the fiduciary duty of the consultants? And certainly there is the reputation that they are using the best practices possible, the best analysis possible to make the decision, not basically for the applicant, but for the city as well, and of course the community. So, that is something, when we do talk about traffic, when we do talk about noise pollution, when light pollution as well, that is something that I also do weigh heavily on my side. And ultimately, there is still code enforcement. There is police department. We do have that to ensure that there is that fidelity to that business narrative, to the business plan. So just a couple things to think about as we, if we do make a decision, or at least there's the four options, I do urge my fellow commissioners to take those thoughts into account. Yeah, so of course we can continue to deliberate, but I just did seeing I haven't heard any feedback or additional comment or questions to either the public or staff or amongst yourselves. I wanted to just check in if there is a motion on the table.
I'll motion to approve.
Is there a second? I'll second. Roll call, please.
I apologize. Before we take roll call, just for clarity, is the motion to approve the resolution as written, or are you trying to incorporate any of the conditions of approval that you've all just discussed? There's a procedure for that.
I rewind a second and ask the commission if there is specific language that they would like us to consider.
Specific language as far as amending the existing resolution, or?
Well, if we were to approve with conditions, we have to have very specific conditions.
Or you can amend the conditions as well
I'm
in
sorry,
the
yes.
resolution.
So when I seconded, I was under the impression that there were no amendments.
Okay. Well, then we vote on that because there's a motion and a second. So procedurally, we can vote. We have to vote.
Planning Secretary, roll call, please.
Chair Pena,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gonzalez,
Abstain.
Commissioner Escobosa,
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
No.
Commissioner Miranda de Zip.
No.
Motion does not pass.
So I'd like just to reopen deliberations. I'm curious to see those who, so again, deliberation, or again, if there's another motion on the table.
Well, and again, I'm bringing up the question, is there specific language amendments that anybody would like to see or bring up?
I think for me, two things that that I'm a little concerned about is the encroachment of the light, and maybe this is a staff question. So once the facility, I don't even know if this can be, wait, is there going to be a light study once a facility is complete? I know there was a light study at another, facility, but I'm just wondering, once it's built, is there going to be then a light study, or is that at that point?
It's the project is not conditioned in that way. So what's been provided for you is a photometric plan created by a light engineer uh, uh, based on the lighting that's being proposed. So that's already been done. That's before you. But an after the fact study that measures the light, that's not part of the scope yet.
And then I guess my other concern is just the 10 p.m. I'm almost wishing it would be like a 9 p.m. Sure.
So yes, you'd like to address the 9 versus 10 p.m., sir?
Part of my client, and if to ensure that operations are ceased and everyone's off site by 10 p.m. and lights go off by 10 p.m., my client would be willing to agree to a condition limiting, to modify essentially the business plan to limit the operational hours to 9:30. If that works, so that we can be done by that point in time. If the request is 9 p.m., I'd have to confer with my client. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I can't. I also wear hearing aids, and I'm
I-
having a very difficult time
I
hearing.
apologize. I will, so what I was just saying was to ensure that all operations are ceased and everyone's off the site by 10 o'clock for the current plan. My client has already suggested, and I wanted to come up here and provide the accommodation if possible, to add a condition or to modify our business plan to limit operations to cease by 9:30 with all the lights being done by 10. We would agree to that condition right now to address your concern. Additionally, if we need to do a subsequent photometric plan through the process of getting building permits and everything like that to confirm what's being installed, that can be explicit. It's my understanding, under your code, that when we go in for plan check, that we'd have to demonstrate compliance with the city's light standards and light requirements as part of that to conform, that staff can confirm this or not. But we are willing to commit to doing whatever study is necessary to do that as well. Thank you.
For the other folks that voted no or abstained, just not to put you on the spot, were there any additional concerns that needed to, or at least any gaps?
I think the noise pollution, I think theoretically, it meets it, but when you actually get out there, and it's 7 days a week. So it's and I understand the compliance of it, but to me, I think it's a bit much.
So what would be the proposed amendment or condition around that?
I also just want to remind the commission, Baldwin Park Municipal Code Section 153.1210.0500 B states that upon reasonable notice, the city may conduct an investigation to ensure that the permittee is maintaining the use as permitted for and has not converted or modified the use that includes the conditions of approval.
Correct.
So Roman, you mentioned, so at least first of all, we're hearing that we're bringing it down just to 9:30, but I think your concern is still just whether it's 9:30, 10 p.m. or 6 p.m. It's just the noise pollution.
Correct.
So for the applicant, again, I know one of our concerns is that we kind of looking at a little bit about sort of the light pollution, the noise pollution. Any recommendations, at least on your side, just for our sake, just to I'm sorry, the microphone?
You'd think I'd learn. In addition to the two conditions of approval we just talked about regarding light and thank you on the other one. The other two we just talked about. Regards to the noise specifically, we'd also be willing to agree to a condition formalizing the existing requirement to allow the city to conduct whatever studies it needs to do to confirm compliance with the code if a complaint is received. I'd also like to point out, and I was just remiss to say this earlier, just as for Commissioner Rodriguez's information, the noise studies that were originally used as our baseline to provide a comparison was for a much more intensive use. That's an actual soccer field where games, and it's like regulation size. They have whistles, they have cheering, they have all these things. The use we're proposing, again, I need to stress this, is just nowhere near the same. We're talking about my client and her other employee, one-on-one or one-on-four instructions, teaching them how to shoot a ball from the goal line to the goal, right? I mean, this is not a game. This is not one of those things. This is more tantamount to almost, I honestly can't think of anything, maybe learning how to chip or something like that at a golf range. So I want to be clear that the noise impacts that are even discussed in our own environmental document are an extremely conservative analysis, and we still show that we'll comply with the city's municipal code. And again, while we don't think the condition is necessary because the city has its own authority to do this anyway, if the commission would like to include a condition specifically giving the city that right, my client would agree to that as well.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I know we also have Ms. Susan Cole as well, and just given that we've kind of thrown these recommendations or perhaps Band-Aids, I'm curious to see if you'd like just to come up to the podium and see if you can provide a response and how you feel about it.
Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. I became the spokesperson just because everybody else is ill. I also I'm a retired city planner, so I know that's why you get the documents that you get. Unfortunately, the conditions of approval that have been shown to you, that's all you are voting on. And I don't know about this business plan because I haven't seen a business plan. I don't know if you've seen a business plan. So there might be a business plan, but you don't know what's in it. Right now, all you see is that training session thing. So that's what they want to do. But what they can do is anything that's not in there saying that they can't do it. So if you don't put a condition in there saying that everybody has to go home at 10, they can be downstairs in the indoor soccer place. They could be in the gym. That the exterior lights on the top will be off, but the lights in the parking lot will be on until someone leaves. So there's so much in there in the information that I gave you. And I didn't get the staff report until 2:00 on Sunday, just like you guys did. And I've been frantically trying to comb through it. I really, really urge you to read thoroughly the staff report and read the resolutions because like Commissioner Escobosa said, and I hope that's your name, I pronounce it right.
Escobosa.
Escobosa, thank you. Your job is to see if what they're proposing to do meets the development code and meets the general plan. The general plan is the why you should approve something. The development code tells you how to approve it or how to deny it, hopefully in this case. So you have the tools, the general plan and the Development Code both talk about these special, unique places where the industrial zone backs into the residential zone. And that's what they have here. For better or for worse, that's the property they bought. So there's some things you can do and there's some things you can't do. And it's written there. It's not flexible. It's not, maybe you go by the parking code correctly, or maybe you make something up and say, well, you know, they've said they're not going to be using it. Well, if you approve it as a soccer field, they're going to use it as a soccer field. And whether the courts are small, like in Covina and Pacoima, that's the size soccer fields they use. Those are not full-size soccer fields. They're 5x5 play. So if you honestly think they're going to do only training, put it in there. Say all you're going to do is training. But if you don't say you can't do anything else, that gives the entitlement to that property. And if these people sell that property, the next person who buys it will have this carte blanche to do anything. And one other thing about the conditions of approval, you can't, once they've already spent millions of dollars on buying this property. They're going to spend another million to build it. And once they install the lights and build it, you can't walk back from that. You can tell code enforcement as much as you want, but if it's constructed like a soccer facility, it's going to be used as a soccer facility. And if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
I do want to touch on the point that the speaker made, which is that if you don't feel comfortable simply relying on the condition of approval requiring compliance with the business plan, nothing prohibits you from adding a condition of approval to ensure that the specific language that you feel comfortable with approving this, if you are leaning towards approval, you can add that condition of approval just to be specific, because as she mentioned, once you approve this and you have those conditions, you can't come back really unless you have a whole hearing and go through this process again.
And I apologize for interrupting, but if you want to approve their business plan, you should see what is their business plan. I mean, the condition of approval says they're going to adhere to their business plan. But unless you know what it is and it's written down for you to enforce, you're just giving them a blank check.
Are there any questions to Ms. Cole? Great, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would feel comfortable if we included specific language as to what the facility would be used for, so for training purposes. Also the age limit, the 5 to 17, and then the ceasing play by 9:30 and all lights off by 10.
Can you repeat that second condition? I'm just making.
The age limit of those that will be using the facility, ages 5 to 17. I don't know how specific, it sounds like we have to get very specific, and but I also like the point that we can go, I guess city can go down and make sure that they are abiding by the conditions that are set forth in the agreement.
And just to add to that, I know in their business operations plan and hours of operation, if they are going to be done by 10, we might have to put a condition to change the training schedule, because I know it says Monday through Friday from 4 to 10. And then it says class times will be broken up from 4 to 6 p.m., 6 to 8, and then 6 to 10. So if lights off by 10, then we need to make sure that that training schedule is also changed.
Well, and then I have a question because, and they already shared that they would be willing to they would be willing to add an amendment in which they cease operations at 9:30 in order to turn off the lights. But now there's an added layer of proposing that we make sure that they adjust their training schedule.
The applicant can adjust their training schedule as long as you have a condition of approval stating that no training can happen after 9:30. Then that would supersede any of
Well,
the.
and I'm just trying to clarify that it's not up to us to adjust their schedule because 5 months from now, let's say everything goes according to their plan, 5 months from now, they might determine that they're playing too late into the night and they don't have to keep coming back for that, right? As long as all we're saying is shut down by 9:30. How you do that is on you.
Correct.
So it seems like the applicant wanted to provide some additional comment. So
Oh, I just wanted to give our agreement if I understood. If there's only three, I didn't want to interrupt the process. So I'll wait. If you want to ask me at the end, if we have any issues with any of the conditions that's proposed, be happy to come up, but however you would like to handle it.
so if we can just repeat the conditions that we'd like just to add.
The first one is that specifically identify that it would be used as a training facility. Also include the age groups that will be using the facility, 5 to 17. Cease and play by 9:30 and all lights off at 10.
Can you repeat that one more time, please?
From the beginning.
Just the third one you just
The
said?
third one, cease and play by 9:30 and all lights off by 10. And I don't know if we need to include that we under F that we wouldn't allow rental of the facility to a third party or just rental facility in general. I guess if we're saying it's going to only be used for a training facility, that may
Well,
cover everything.
sure. My understanding is the way that I had interpreted it. If it was a rental facility, they would still have to be abiding by the same conditions that we had. So again, that's
But I'm saying a rental facility for large events. Like that's what I would be cautious of.
but large events as in only for soccer or and that was the please.
Yes, there's the what I would suggest if the commission is amenable, training facility as specifically articulated in the business plan, which when that will limit us to what is in the business plan, none of which would accommodate large gatherings or large functions or anything like that you're worried about. And that way there's some specificity as to what training facility means.
So it's not like I could have my wedding there, right? If I wanted to.
Oh, exactly right.
Yeah. Okay.
No, correct. You couldn't have a wedding, you couldn't do. It would be an interesting question. But no, just to be very clear, again,
Sure.
it is a training facility with a very narrow use. It's a unique new use. It is not comparable to things like 24-hour fitness, Lifetime Fitness, or anything like that. That is not what this is. This is a small, narrow use to benefit up to about 60-ish kids on a given day, I guess, maybe a little more. And my client just has invested years at this point working with the city to get us to here, and has done things to also accommodate concerns from the neighbors, including adding the trees, moving the setback back, things of those natures. And so we're just really here to any other conditions that you need to address any of your specific concerns. I'm happy to opine, but the three you just listed sound acceptable. Thank you.
So is that something that you felt comfortable removing for not limiting the rent or prohibiting rental as long as it's meeting within those conditions? Okay. So from the point of view for staff, so what I'm hearing is that what we're doing right now is adding those additional conditions, even though they were in the business narrative as is, we're just adding perhaps a little bit more teeth to the resolution. Is that kind of what we're just wanting to make sure that we're on the same page?
Yes, the conditions of approval can provide a peace of mind to the planning commissioners if they wish to approve this. And it would also allow for even additional mechanisms for enforcing and ensuring that the applicant is using the property only as permitted and as presented before you all today.
Is there a way to add a condition to restrict parking to the community?
You can add a condition of approval that would require, for example, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth or assume what you're saying, but you could add a condition of approval requiring that the applicant, I want to harmonize with the language used here, that the business shall require signage prohibiting parking for non-patrons on the subject property.
Yeah, that's kind of like the language that I would propose, or that for our fellow commissioners to consider.
So just want to clarify, anybody who's not involved, again, a patron would not be allowed to park there, is that right?
Correct. So anybody who's not involved
Business,
with
sure.
doing business with the
And if you
Soccer
may come to
facility.
the podium, I mean, getting your exercise in. But again, certainly that, of course you wouldn't want anybody else parking overnight and all that stuff.
My client would be accepting of a condition saying that parking will be, and will shall take steps and signage to ensure parking is restricted to patrons and employees, if that's okay, but employees also, just to make sure there's no confusion in the future. That's how many parking spaces are supposed to be accommodated per Mr. Baldwin's report earlier.
Sure.
But yes, we're amenable to that's 4 so far I have, and we're amenable to all 4. Thank you.
So was that, I mean, we add that, do you feel comfortable at least with the resolution, or at least with the conditions that we've been adding to the resolution?
Yes.
Okay. Roman, how are you feeling? So okay.
All right, for my own clarification, can I just go down the 4? Just so that I make sure I'm understanding what we have right now as potential conditions of approval. 1, operations would cease at 9:30 in order to ensure lights are out at 10. The facility would be for training purposes only. There would be no large tournaments, scrimmages, parties.
The specific language that I believe was on the table was that the training facility shall be used only as specified in the business plan.
Okay. I'm just,
And that's just the language that I heard. Feel free to amend that as you wish.
so right now, I guess I'm just trying to have an understanding of what's on the table. I wasn't looking for the, but help me with the language, please. Number 3, the restriction of patron or age. I don't know how to word this one, but only children ages 5 to 17 would be allowed to participate. 18 and above would not be allowed to enroll. And the business would put up signage restricting parking to patrons and employees only. Those are the 4 that we have on the table.
May I actually suggest patrons, parents, their guardians?
Yeah.
Because if we're using the specific verbiage that patrons can only be 5 to 17 years old.
What would be other language that you use for that, for the age? Because I'm trying to imagine that parking sign and it's just getting longer and longer.
Training shall be limited to individuals aged 5 to 17.
Okay.
So Roman, there's nothing that could be done on your side just to convince you from nay to yay, or maybe, or any other conditions that you may recommend to.
No.
No? Okay. And then I'd still like to give you, Susan, Ms. Cole, another opportunity to speak. Based off of just the, sure. Well, maybe the specific question I'll actually ask is, given just the conditions that we have just added or proposed, I'm curious to see what your thoughts are.
Pardon my interruption. Please check that the microphone's turned on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Loud and
Okay.
clear.
Sorry about that. Okay. So I don't know what the business plan is. I haven't seen it. Have you seen the business plan?
Yes.
Okay.
So
It's attachment 3 in the staff report.
I didn't see an attachment 3. I saw a training session. Is there something other than that? Am
yes,
I-
it's right before it.
Okay, I beg your pardon. I didn't look at it. So does the business plan then say they can only be open from 4 to 10 during the week?
So my understanding is that, yes, in addition to that, we are adding additional language to, or the conditions to the resolution, just to ensure that there is the right word, not transparency, but additional safeguards.
Yes, I really appreciate that, the safeguards that you're putting on use. However, that doesn't address the fact that the building itself is closer to the property line than it should be. And it doesn't address the fact that the building itself is bigger than it's supposed to be, according to the development code. And it doesn't address the fact that I don't think neighbors are going to want to go park in there. They're worried that the people who are using this are going to come park in our neighborhood, are going to come park on Joan Bridge and park illegally on Jordan Bridge. So I don't think you've addressed all of our major concerns, which is the noise, the light, and the traffic that you've discussed with the traffic engineer. He didn't talk anything about parking. He just talked about the trips that were generated. So the parking is a separate issue. We don't think they're looking on their training session. They are proposing to have from 4 to 9 o'clock, or 10 o'clock, is about 74 people. Now, some of those might carpool, but most parents, especially with tender-age children, they're going to sit there and they're going to park there. So where are the other people going to park? And there's going to be staff there, and maybe somebody's using the gym. So I don't think it's realistic. And once they build it, like I said, you're not going to get them to tear it down. You're not going to get them to rewire the lighting. What you're approving right now is what you're going to see built.
Great.
And
Oh, go ahead.
I'm done, and I'll go back to my seat and read the business plan so I can be more articulate. So I really think it would behoove you. I know they don't want it continued, but I think it would be in your best interest to analyze all sides of this from a legal standpoint. Additionally, their CEQA is you can only have a categorical exemption like that is if everything else meets the development code and everything else meets the general plan. And as I've showed you, there are multiple policies in the general plan that they don't adhere to and they're not consistent with or in compliance with. And in the zoning code, there are multiple instances where they've given you an explanation, but they really do not meet the development code. And in those instances, you cannot use a categorical exemption like this. You need a mitigated neg deck like they tried to do before, and they couldn't make the findings for that. And that's another thing, you need to make the findings. And I think I've spelled it out pretty clearly. You cannot make the findings legally on these. So the planning department may or may not be here when this goes to the city council. By this time, they may have a buyer in the wings. We are going to be here and you are going to be here. So I would just suggest you look very clearly at what you're approving. It's awfully loose. And thank you so much for letting me talk, because usually they don't let other people talk. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Want to just check with the pulse of the commission to see if there are any additional questions to staff or any members of the public or the applicants, or if there might be a motion on the table, and perhaps with just the conditions that we've just talked about.
Okay. I'm going to require a little assistance with this one, but I would like to motion to approve with the additional conditions of approval. Number one, we are going to wait for the MetroLink to pass.
Is it going to downtown or San Bernardino?
San Bernardino. Based on how the noise is moving. All right, so first condition of approval. Operations are to cease at 9:30 p.m.
I believe the term was training to cease at 9:30 p.m.
Training.
Operations to cease at 10.
Thank you. Training will stop at 9:30. All operations will stop at 10 o'clock. Number two. The facility purposes will remain for training only and will limit usage to what's stated on the business plan. Number three, training shall be limited to individuals ages 5 to 7. Number four, they shall post signage restricting parking to patrons and employees, which does include the patrons' parents and guardians.
Correct. The business shall erect signage that restricts parking, only patrons, their parents, and employees.
So that is the business shall erect signage restricting parking to the patrons, their guardians, and employees. If that makes sense, because now I've
Correct. That's what I have written down.
Is there a second?
Second.
Fund Secretary, roll call, please.
Chair Peña,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gonzalez,
Abstain.
Chair Escobosa,
yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
No.
and Commissioner Miranda DeZib.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. So as far as announcing that the planning commission has voted. This is this and then the conditions. I'm gonna. Huh? Okay. So the planning commission has voted to adopt resolution PC 23-8, approving CP 23-005 and PR 2321. A resolution of the planning commission of the city of Baldwin Park recommending consideration and approval of the conditional use permit to allow recreational facility, indoor-outdoor soccer facility use, and the design review to review the building architecture and site design. We also find that the project is exempt from CEQA per Class 32 exemption.
And I would like to add that there is a 15-day appeal period after this decision, which has just been made.
Great. So we can move on just to the next item on the agenda, and it's reports of officers. So I understand that we, of course, have a new commissioner.
Welcome, Diana Miranda DeZib, our newest commissioner. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, we are very lucky to have you, especially with your years and years of experience in the school board. So we certainly are going to be tapping into your expertise as we move forward. Thank you so much. And on to commission staff and communications.
I did have one question I wanted to circle back. It's been a couple hours at this point. But there was a comment made about, now I'm trying to remember correctly, about the
ADA accessibility.
ADA accessibility at the MetroLink when they're boarding for offboarding the train. And I wonder if there's any information that can be looked up regarding what are the requirements and how we're meeting up to those. We had a public speaker comment earlier about their difficulty in getting off the train and getting on the train, that there's no steps, there's no ramp. Is there a ramp?
So these are, they're good questions. I think it's important to also figure out who's responsible for addressing these.
Yeah.
If it's in on city property, it's the city. If it's in the public right of way, that's also the city. That'll be our public works department. However, if it's on land owned by Metrolink and operated by Metrolink, it may be something for them to address if their infrastructure is substandard. So, but that would be something. What I'd like to do is I'd like to take this information and consult with our public works department, and they would advise.
I would also like to add that the commenter was given Public Works' contact information, so I did advise them prior to the meeting to speak with them on that matter as well.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Is there any additional comments or further comments for the commission or by the commission?
Just a note really is that we will have a meeting at our next scheduled hearing, a possible hearing date, which is April 9th. So please do mark your calendars.
I had a question. I'm not sure if we're able to pull back the meeting minutes from February 26th. I noticed a mistake.
They've been approved.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
What was the mistake?
Oh, for the action, it says moved by Rodriguez Gonzalez. So there's two last names.
Thank you. If there are no further comments by the commission or for the commission, I will accept a motion for adjournment.
I will motion to adjourn.
And I'll second.
Planning Secretary, roll call, please.
Commissioner Peña,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rodriguez. Oh, sorry. Gonzalez, Vice Chair Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Yes.
Commissioner Escobosa,
Yes.
and Commissioner Miranda de Zoo.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 9:22. Thank you all for your time.